You don't care about your privacy? Maybe it's about time that you should. My name is Gordon Edes. I'm a student at North Park University. It's June 27, 2019. The class is Digital Ethics. The professor is Dr. Trevor James, the School of Professional Studies at North Park. Paul Revere is a big deal in my home state of Massachusetts, sounding the alarm when the British regulars marched on Lexington and Concord, an action that lit the fuse to the American Revolution. Remember, 1 if by land, 2 if by sea? Now, I'm no Paul Revere. But let this serve as an alarm. If we don't start doing more to protect our privacy, we're going to end up with, that's right, Big Brother watching you. The information age ushered in by the internet has transformed our existence. But for as much as we love our smartphones and iPads, our Facebooks, Twitter, and Instagram, we're giving away much of our privacy and we don't even notice. It raises a fundamental question. Do we control the internet, or does the internet control us? What happens on your iPhone stays on your iPhone. Oh, really? Washington Post technology columnist Jeffrey A. Fowler discovered in the space of 1 week 5,400 trackers on his iPhone, mostly in apps. Privacy is one of the most important topics of our time. Sundar Pichai, CEO, Google. Oh, really? In another experiment, that man Fowler, in 1 week of web surfing on a desktop computer with Google Chrome, discovered 11,189 requests for tracker cookies. Seen from the inside, Google looks a lot like surveillance software. Fowler. All right, so you all recognize those, but those are not the kind of cookies we're talking about. Cookies are small data files that are written and stored on the user's hard disk drive by a website when the user visits that site with a browser. Had your fill of cookies? Let me tell you something about beacons. I think you know which one we mean. Beacons are small pieces of software code that are installed on a user's computer that can track a web surfer's location and online activities. Beacons are not your friend. Beacons interacting with your smartphones can track your movements at airports, malls, subways, buses, taxis, gyms, hotels, hospitals, music festivals, cinemas, museums, and yes, even at ballparks. Depressed yet? We haven't even told you yet about data mining, flash cookies, big data. So what happens to all your private information? The easy answer is it's not private anymore. It's no accident when you look at a pair of new shoes or a best-selling book on one site, ads for those products follow you around wherever else you go on the web. As Fowler wrote in the Post, the color of your underwear should be your business, but it's not. Now, that might strike you as a small price to pay for all the extraordinary tools now at our disposal. The connections we make with our friends and family on Facebook and other social media, the navigation help we get on Google Maps, the billions of pieces of information now at our fingertips. But then something like the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal happens, and we realize that more than underwear is at stake. Cambridge Analytica had purchased Facebook data on tens of millions of Americans without their knowledge to build a psychological warfare tool, which it unleashed on U.S. voters to help elect Donald Trump as president. And since 9/11, the amount of information collected by government agencies has grown exponentially, exacerbating the tension between what we need to do to be safe and what we need to do to salvage our privacy. So, should this be the final word? You have zero privacy anyway. Get over it. Scott McNealy, former CEO, Sun Microsystems. This may be a good time for a, timeout. And ask the question, what do we mean by privacy anyway? This definition by ethicist Ruth Gavison works. Privacy is the limitation of others' access to an individual with three key elements: secrecy, or confidentiality, anonymity, solitude. Secrecy is the limiting of the dissemination of knowledge about oneself. Anonymity is defined as protection from undesired attention. Solitude is the lack of physical proximity to others. Philosopher Charles Fried described what is necessary for privacy to exist. One has privacy if, and only if, one has control over information about oneself. What are the benefits of privacy? Privacy is a recognition of each person's true freedom. Privacy is necessary for a person to blossom as an individual. Privacy communicates to an individual that he is responsible for his or her development as a unique person. Privacy lets us remove our public persona. Privacy can foster intellectual activities, allowing us to shut out the rest of the world to focus. Privacy is the only way to develop relationships involving friendships, respect, love, trust. It allows for, quote, moral capital, unquote, to build intimate relationships. To have social relationships, you need to have some control over who is able to gain access to our physical selves and our personal information. Michael J. Quinn, Ethics for the Information Age. I also like this definition of ambient privacy, offered by blogger Maciej Ceglowski, cited in the New York Times Privacy Project. The understanding there is a value in having our everyday interactions with one another remain outside the realm of monitoring, and that the small details of our daily lives should pass by unremembered. And what happens when privacy is compromised? Without privacy, we are more vulnerable to manipulation and control by others. We are more timid about our pursuit of our goals and activities. There is an extrinsic loss of freedom. It threatens our autonomy. There is an intrinsic loss of freedom. We are inhibited by knowing we are being watched. It leaves us ripe for abuse by bullies, spies, and hackers. The ethical component. The Kantian would argue that those collecting our personal data are treating humanity as a means to an end, exploiting sensitive data for economic gain. Proponents of virtue ethics would consider the manipulation of people and the curtailing of autonomy as immoral. The utilitarian would acknowledge the benefits of data harvesting, the advances in healthcare, cybersecurity, the financial sector, scientific research that have come as a result of broad data sharing, but would ultimately conclude that the harms outweigh the benefits. So how do we protect our privacy? Around 80 countries have adopted comprehensive national laws protecting personal information. The most notable is the General Data Protection Regulation, the European Union's comprehensive privacy law that requires companies globally to rework their privacy programs of substantial expense, and at substantial expense, and with the possibility of monumental fines. California also passed the Consumer Privacy Act that gives consumers extensive new rights, including the ability to tell companies not to sell or retain their data. Just 2 days ago in the New York Times, Peter M. Lefkowitz, the Chief Privacy and Digital Risk Officer at Citrix Systems, wrote a piece entitled, "Why America Needs a Thoughtful Federal Privacy Law." Congress has introduced 7 privacy bills this year, including one sponsored by Senator Amy Klobuchar, entitled the Social Media Privacy Protection and Consumer Rights Act of 2019. The bill would require companies to provide an option for people to request to see personal information a company has collected on them and with whom that information has been shared. Companies would also have to allow people to opt out of the collection and use of their privacy and information. That would include social security numbers, email addresses, telephone numbers, contents of messages, and other sensitive data. The proposed law would apply to any website, app, social network, search engine, mobile operating system, email server, or internet provider. Enforcement would be the responsibility of the Federal Trade Commission. Whether it is Klobuchar's bill or another piece of legislation, Lefkowitz argues that it should adhere to these standards, set a consistent standard for how companies treat consumers' personal information, and would inspire greater confidence in how responsible companies behave, address the significant risks posed by the aggregation of consumer profiles, which include racial and economic discrimination and a lack of transparency about how information is collected and used, would allow the United States to harmonize its laws with those of other major economies, easing trade concerns and promoting U.S. technology in Europe and beyond. Many of us have been too casual about our privacy, neglecting to create strong passwords and paying scant heed to the myriad ways in which our behaviors are tracked. The activity in Congress suggests that we are awakening to the threat to our freedom the assaults on our privacy represent, to which I say, it's about time. Thanks for listening.